Sir, access to this tower is restricted. You need a valid appointment and corporate attire. Your name's not on my list. The security guard stated flatly, his eyes flicking dismissively over the older man's simple jacket and worn slacks. Welcome to the Unknown Legends, uncovering the mysteries of untold heroes and forgotten stories. Subscribe, like, and step into the world of legends waiting to be discovered. Frank Larson, 71, held up a slightly crumpled printout of an email invitation. I have an appointment. Top floor, Veteran Advisory Council meeting. The guard barely glanced at it. Doesn't matter what that says. You don't meet the building's standards. Step aside. Frank didn't argue, just sighed quietly and moved back from the imposing glass doors. 3 minutes later the express elevator chimed and a figure emerged who radiated authority. When he saw Frank waiting outside the barrier, his face hardened instantly. If you believe true authority commands respect, not demands it, that type of honor. Frank Larson had seen more impressive entrances than the gleaming lobby of Omnicorp Tower. He'd navigated jungle canopies, desert horizons, and the chaotic aftermath of battlefields whose names were now footnotes in classified reports. Command Sergeant Major, retired, that had been his title, earned over 30 years of dedicated service, culminating in roles where his tactical acumen and leadership under fire were legendary within certain circles, though utterly unknown outside them. Now life was quieter. He lived in a modest suburban bungalow, tending his small garden, volunteering at the local veteran center, and finding satisfaction in simple routines. His wife Clara had passed 5 years prior, leaving a silence he tried to fill with purposeful activity. Today's purpose was a meeting on the 50th floor of the Omnicorp Tower. The company's CEO, a former Army captain named Richard Hayes, whom Frank had briefly mentored years ago during a joint training exercise, had launched a new veteran outreach and employment initiative. Hayes had personally invited Frank to be part of an initial advisory council, valuing his deep understanding of enlisted soldiers' challenges and transitions. Frank wasn't one for corporate environments, but the mission felt important. He dressed neatly, polished shoes, clean slacks, a pressed shirt, and a simple dark windbreaker jacket, not a suit certainly, but respectable. He arrived 10 minutes early, the email invitation printed out just in case his old flip phone couldn't display it properly. He anticipated a smooth entry, a quick check-in, and then the elevator ride to meet Hayes and the others. He hadn't anticipated Guard Davis. Guard Kevin Davis was young, ambitious, and deeply invested in the perceived importance of his role at the Omnicorp lobby security desk. He liked the crisp uniform, the sense of control, the clear delineation between those who belonged inside the shimmering tower and those who didn't. He adhered strictly to the rules: dress code, pre-registration, valid corporate ID, seeing them as markers of order and prestige. When Frank Larson approached, Davis immediately categorized him. Outsider, likely lost, possibly a delivery person trying the wrong entrance, or maybe just someone trying to use the lobby restrooms. The simple jacket, the age, the lack of expensive accessories, it all signaled does not belong. Can I help you? Davis asked, his tone a well-practiced blend of forced politeness and underlying suspicion. Frank explained his purpose, presenting the printed email. Davis waved it away dismissively. Sir, anyone can print an email. You're not in the system for a visitor badge, and building policy requires business attire for all guests accessing the upper floors. That jacket doesn't qualify. But Mr. Hayes, the CEO specifically invited me, Frank stated calmly, trying to keep the frustration from his voice. He knows I'm coming. Perhaps you could just call his office. Davis scoffed internally, call the CEO's office for this old guy? Unlikely. The CEO's office doesn't handle lobby check-ins. Sir, rules are rules. Without pre-registration and proper attire, I cannot grant you access. He gestured vaguely towards the exit. You'll need to reschedule or contact your party to make proper arrangements. Frank looked at the impassive face of the guard, the rigid set of his shoulders. He recognized the type, someone more invested in wielding minor authority than using judgment. Arguing would be pointless. He glanced at his watch. The meeting started in 5 minutes. He tried calling Hayes's direct extension from his old phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Hayes was likely already in the pre-brief. He sighed. This wasn't how he'd envisioned the morning starting. He stepped back from the desk, moving near the large potted plants that decorated the lobby edge, deciding to wait a few moments, hoping Hayes or his assistant might appear. Davis watched him go, a self-satisfied smirk flickering across his lips. He'd maintained the standard. He turned back to his monitor, pointedly ignoring the elderly man now standing awkwardly near the lobby entrance, just another piece of unwelcome static in his controlled environment. Frank stood patiently observing the flow of people through the lobby. Men and women in sharp suits carrying briefcases, swiping access cards with practiced ease. They moved with an air of purpose and belonging that highlighted his own liminal status, trapped between the street and the destination. He wasn't angry, just weary. He'd faced down far greater obstacles than an overzealous security guard. Still, the casual dismissal stung, the assumption that his appearance automatically disqualified him. He considered his options. He could leave, call Hayes later, explain the situation. But the initiative felt important, and he'd made a commitment. He ran through his contacts. Hayes was unreachable. The program coordinator listed on the email was likely already in the meeting room. Then he remembered General Marcus Thorne, retired, his old commanding officer from his final tour, who served on Omnicorp's board of directors. Hayes had mentioned Thorne might drop into the meeting if his schedule allowed. Thorne was old school, a man who understood chain of command but also valued grit over polish. Maybe, taking out his phone again, Frank scrolled through his limited contacts until he found the private number. He stepped further away from the security desk, shielding the phone slightly as he dialed. It rang 3 times. Thorne. The voice was as gruff and direct as Frank remembered. General, it's Frank Larson. There was a brief pause, then recognition. Sergeant Major. Good to hear your voice. Everything all right? Mostly, sir, Frank replied quietly. Just a bit of a hiccup getting into the Omnicorp tower for Hayes's Veteran Council meeting. Front desk security has some strict rules about jackets, it seems. He kept his tone light, avoiding complaint. Thorne chuckled dryly. Strict rules, eh? Don't tell me they're holding up the man who practically wrote the field manual on perimeter security. Something like that, sir. I'm sure it'll get sorted. Don't worry about sorting it, Frank. Where are you exactly? Main lobby, yes sir. Near the entrance. Stay put. I happen to be finishing another meeting upstairs. Be down in 3 minutes. The line clicked dead. Frank slipped the phone back into his pocket. He hadn't expected the general to intervene personally, but he wasn't entirely surprised either. Thorne didn't tolerate bureaucratic nonsense, especially when it affected his people. Frank resumed his patient wait, unaware that Guard Davis had noticed the brief phone call, assuming the old man was fruitlessly calling for backup that would never arrive, reinforcing Davis's sense of control. Almost exactly 3 minutes later, the polished doors of the express elevator slid open with a soft chime. General Marcus Thorne strode out, radiating an aura of command that age hadn't diminished. He wore a perfectly tailored dark gray suit that spoke of quiet power. His posture was ramrod straight. His keen eyes quickly scanned the lobby. He immediately spotted Frank standing near the plants. Beside the general walked Richard Hayes, Omnicorp's CEO, looking slightly flustered as if the general had cut their previous conversation short. Frank, Hayes called out warmly, moving ahead of the general. I was wondering where you were. Security said they hadn't checked you in yet. He extended a hand, relief clear on his face. General Thorne followed his gaze, shifting from Frank to the security desk, his expression hardening as he took in the scene. Frank clearly outside the secure area, Guard Davis standing stiffly behind his counter. Having trouble, Sergeant Major? Thorne asked, his voice deceptively mild as he reached Frank, bypassing Hayes's handshake for a moment to clasp Frank's shoulder in a firm, familiar gesture. Just a misunderstanding about the dress code, General. Frank replied evenly, nodding towards Davis. Hayes looked confused. Dress code? Frank, you look fine. I told security to expect you. He turned towards the desk. Davis, what's the problem here? This is Frank Larson, my guest for the advisory council. Guard Davis suddenly looked less confident. The arrival of the CEO and a distinguished, authoritative figure he didn't recognize, both clearly familiar with the old man he'd dismissed, sent a jolt of anxiety through him. Sir, Davis stammered, addressing Hayes but acutely aware of the general's unwavering stare. Building policy dictates business attire for access above the lobby. Mr. Larson's jacket, and he wasn't pre-registered in. General Thorne finished speaking. Frank Larson wasn't just an employee. He was the heart of this company, a visionary. Everyone here should respect him. The security guard, still a bit confused, asked, but why hasn't he been seen lately? General Thorne took a deep breath. Frank went on leave a few months ago but never returned. Many people in the company are restless without him. Some say he started his own business, but no one knows the truth. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the distance. Everyone's eyes turned toward the door. Slowly, the door opened and a man entered, wearing a large, worn-out coat, his face a bit tired but his eyes shining with an unusual spark. Frank? General Thorne extended his hand. The man stepped forward with a slight smile. Yes, I'm Frank. It's been a long time since I last met you all. The security guard's eyes widened. You? How are you here? Frank looked around and said, have I changed? Maybe. But my passion for the company is still the same. The CEO, Richard Hayes, who had been quietly sitting, stood up and said, Frank, your return will bring new hope to the company. We all need you. A new energy filled the meeting room. Frank looked at everyone and said, I'm going to take this company back to where it started. Will you all support me? The security guard, who had been a little nervous before, now smiled. Welcome back, Frank.